Picture this: 7 riders, 1 desperate village, and a mission that turned a simple Western into a Hollywood legend. The Magnificent Seven brought us pure grit, sacrifice, and some unforgettable gunslingers. But off the dusty trails and away from the gunfights, time wrote a much darker ending. Some vanished into the shadows, their real lives ending in ways that hit harder than any movie shootout. This is the story of the cast, then and now. Let us start with James Coburn, who played the deadly Britt at 31 years old. Tall, quiet, and dangerously calm, he was the knife-throwing gunman who did not need words to prove he was deadly, while other men carried their courage loudly. Britt kept his in silence. He watched, waited, and moved only when it absolutely mattered. James Coburn passed away in 2002 at 74. After that breakout role, he built a long career around his cool screen presence, starring in westerns and thrillers. He also did action films, eventually winning an Oscar for Affliction. That late career win proves the real depth behind his relaxed, sharp-edged style. Britt worked on screen because Coburn knew the power of doing less. One look, one pause, one quick move with a knife. That was it. In a film about courage, he brought a quiet danger and gave the team its most memorable shadow. George Marti Nes de Hoyos took on Hilario at 39. Playing a simple villager fighting to protect his humble home, Hilario brought real fear and immense dignity. He was not chasing glory or legendary status, just fighting for his people. This was a man trying to protect his family, his land, and his peace. George Marti Nes de Hoyos passed away in 1997 at the age of 77. Throughout Mexican cinema, he was widely respected for roles that felt incredibly honest and grounded. That same raw quality helped make Hilario feel like a real human being, not just background decoration. His presence gave the town a human face, a true voice, and a reason to care. Hilario reminds us that this movie was never just about the guys holding the guns. It was about people with almost nothing who still found the strength to ask for help. Because of him, the villagers' raw hope became as vital as the gunfighters' final stand. Vladimir Sokolov played the old man at age 70. Weak in body but fierce in spirit, he was the elder who knew exactly what fear did to them. His deep words carried the weight of a man who knew survival sometimes demanded courage from even the poorest souls. Vladimir Sokolov passed away in 1962 at the age of 72. He built a global career across Europe and Hollywood, playing old men whose rugged faces carried entire lifetimes. In this film, that lived-in presence made the character feel like much more than a background face. He truly became the village conscience. While the young men hesitated, he showed them that living in fear is worse than death. In a world of shooters, his power came from wisdom, not weapons. Steve McQueen played Vin Tanner at 29, bringing a cool, watchful energy to the screen. Relaxed even when bullets flew, Vin was the ultimate drifter who said more with a quick glance than others could with a long speech. His quiet confidence gave the crew a sharp, modern edge. Steve McQueen passed away in 1980 at just 50 years old. After this breakout role, he rose to become a defining Hollywood icon of the 60s and 70s. Hits like Bullitt, The Great Escape, and The Thomas Crown Affair made him the symbol of effortless screen cool. Vin worked because McQueen never tried too hard. He just leaned back, scanned the room, and let danger come straight to him. In a movie stacked with massive personalities, his quiet swagger made him impossible to ignore. Brad Dexter took on the role of Harry Luck at 43. Practical and always hunting for an angle, Harry joined the team keeping one eye on cash and the other on survival. He brought a grittier vibe, far less noble at first, but lethal when the bullets started flying. Brad Dexter away in 2002 at 85. His acting career often landed him in rugged supporting roles. Off-screen, he was known for deep Hollywood ties, including the time he literally saved Frank Sinatra from drowning during a film shoot in Hawaii. Harry's character worked because he wasn't driven by pure heroism. He wanted a real payout, some concrete reason to risk his neck. But when the final showdown arrived, he stood with the crew, proving even a mercenary could find a little honor. Rosenda Montrose stepped into the role of Petra at 24. Young, proud, and caught between fear and hope, Petra brought a soft humanity to a film dominated by gunmen, dust, and violence. She was never just Chico's love interest. She represented the very life the village fought to protect. Ordinary, fragile, and deeply human even under Calvar's shadow. Rosenda Montrose passed away in 2018 at 83. She built a long career in Mexican film and television, playing roles filled with warmth, strength, and quiet emotion. For global audiences, the Magnificent Seven put her on the map outside Mexico, landing her in one of the greatest westerns of all time. Petra gave this story real stakes. While those 7 men carried guns and braced for death, she carried the future, waiting on the other side of the violence. Her bond with Chico showed that courage is not just about who survives the final, bloody gunfight. Sometimes it is just choosing to keep living. Rico Alanis played Sotero at age 40, living under Calvaris' constant threat. Sotero captured the exhausted fear of a man watching his home get pushed to the absolute brink. He was no gunslinger and certainly no hero in the classic Western sense. Yet he showed exactly what violence does to regular folks who have no cards left to play. Rico Alanis passed away in 2015 at 95. Over a long career, he popped up in countless westerns, crime dramas, and adventure flicks, always bringing a gritty, real-world feel to characters defined by struggle and survival. His face just belonged in those dusty border towns that old Hollywood loved to visit over and over. Sotero gave the entire village its heavy heart. In this movie, the final showdown only matters because the folks they are defending feel completely real. Every tense glance, every quiet moment of terror, and every soul risking a sliver of hope made that final sacrifice feel earned. Nadavid Advasio played a villager at age 47. His role was tiny, but he was the beating heart of this story. He captured a community torn between starvation, fear, and fighting back. Among legendary gunslingers, characters like his remind us that the actual suffering belongs to those who cannot just ride away. Natividad Vasio passed away in 1996 at 84 after appearing in dozens of American and Mexican westerns and TV shows, where his weathered face became a staple of the borderlands Hollywood loved to build. He brought a raw, unpolished authenticity to bit parts that needed to feel totally lived in. His character might not have a name, but he carries the filmesque soul. This western works because the village feels worth saving, not because of some grand speeches. Faces like Vasilio's gave that world its truth, tired and beaten down, but still hoping someone would stand up for them. Eli Wallach played the villain Calvera at age 44. Cold, theatrical, and weirdly charming in his cruelty, Calvera was the perfect villain to give the gunslingers a purpose. He was never just some flat bad guy riding in from the hills. He knew fear was natural, power was taken by force, and the town only existed because he let them. Eli Wallach passed away in 2014 at 98. His legendary career spanned theater, film, and TV, but Western fans will always remember him as the ultimate outlaw. Just a few years after this film, he cemented his legacy as Tuco in the good, the bad, and the ugly. Calvera worked because Wallach gave him actual personality, not just cheap menace. He smiled, bargained, and threatened, acting like a man who simply understood a brutal world and played by its rules. Without a villainess alive, the heroes would not have seemed nearly as brave. Charles Bronson played Bernardo Aureli at 38. Hard, quiet, and carrying the heavy sorrow of a man who had seen too much. Bernardo became the heart of the group. He looked like a stone-cold killer, but his quiet moments with the village kids showed a gentler soul underneath. Charles Bronson passed away in 2003 at 81. After this film, he became a massive action star, famously headlining movies like Death Wish, The Mechanic, and Once Upon a Time in the West. His roles grew tougher, but Bernardo proved early on that Bronson had serious range and real warmth. Bernardo's death hits hard because the local kids did not see him as some mercenary. They saw a hero. Among drifters wondering what their lives are worth, Bernardo found true purpose in defending folks who had absolutely nothing to offer him in return. John Alonzo played Miguel at just 26 years old. As one of the young villagers, Miguel showed the pure terror and pressure of a community trapped under Calvera's thumb. His role wasn't built on loud, dramatic speeches, but on the feeling that this village was filled real people watching their future slip away unless someone dared to stand up. John Alonzo passed away in 2001 at age 66. Later, his career took a massive turn behind the camera as an acclaimed cinematographer. He shot massive films, including Chinatown and Scarface, leaving a legacy that went way beyond his quick acting gig in this western. Miguel reminds us that faces in the Magnificent Seven carried way more history than we knew on screen. He was just part of the helpless village. Years later, Alonzo helped shape the actual visual style of American cinema. He traded a small acting gig for a legendary career behind the lens. Meanwhile, Lee was played by 27-year-old Robert Valve. He was elegant, haunted, and way more fragile than he let on. Lee brought a whole new tension to the group. He had the skill and the name, but he was quietly drowning in fear, doubt, and the terror that his courage was gone. Robert Valvin passed away in 2016 at 83 years old. After this classic film, he became a massive TV star in The Man from Lee, where his sharp style and cool intelligence made him a defining face of the 1960s. His acting career kept rolling across film, TV, and stage for decades. Lee gave the story its most human shadow, while the other gunfighters rode toward danger with pure confidence. He carried his shame in total silence. His final stand mattered because it wasn't just about saving the town. It was about proving to himself that he wasn't a coward. Henry was played by Val Avery when he was 35. He was rough, suspicious, and completely shaped by a brutal frontier life. Avery belonged to a world where men sized each other up instantly and trust was never free, even in a small part. He brought raw grit to this dusty landscape. Val Avery passed away in 2009 at age 85. Over a long career, he became one of those classic character actors who could walk into any scene and instantly make it feel twice as tough. Crime dramas, gritty westerns, and streetwise roles perfectly matched his blunt face and hard delivery. Henry mattered because of the raw texture he brought to the screen. We remember the film for its heroes, but the world works because every side character feels like they actually lived through dust, danger, and bad decisions. Avery gave that world a rough edge. Chamley was played by actor Whit Bissell, who was 50 at the time. Nervous, cautious, and way more concerned with self-preservation than bravery, Chamley showed us the early, ugly fear that always shadows violence. He knew trouble was on the way and wanted absolutely no part of it. Whit Bissell passed away in 1996 at 86 years old. Classic film and TV buffs probably remember him from tons of vintage sci-fi and horror, not to mention westerns like I Was a Teenage Werewolf and The Time Tunnel. He was a familiar face to anyone raised on classic mid-century television. Chamley set the stage long before the main guys became legends, and his fear made total sense when choosing the wrong side could easily get you killed. By capturing that doubt, the film made the bravery of the guys who did fight feel even more powerful. Meanwhile, Robert was played by 34-year-old Bing Russell. He was steady, rough around the edges, and totally natural in a Western setting. Russell added another rugged face to this dangerous frontier. He helped fill the screen with guys who actually looked they belonged in a land built on dust, risk, and sudden death. Bing Russell died in 2003 at age 76. Beyond acting, plenty of fans know him as Kurt Russell's dad, though he carved out his own major spot in classic television westerns. He later became a fixture on Bonanza, where his rug mug fit right into another legendary frontier town. Robert might not be the character name you remember first, but these smaller roles made the world breathe beyond the famous gunfighters. In a Western, the background details are everything. Every cold glare, every blowing tumbleweed, and every extra helps construct the harsh environment our heroes have to navigate. Chico was brought to life by 26-year-old horse Butch Halls. Restless, cocky, and desperate to prove his worth, Chico brought pure fire to the group. Unlike the veteran gunman, he was still chasing the fantasy of being a man, torn between boyish ego, genuine terror, and the urge to earn his stripes among legends. Butch Halls passed away in 2003 at age 69. As a charismatic German actor, he was dubbed the German James Dean early in his career, carrying a raw mix of intense beauty and quiet rebellion that made him stand out in Europe and Hollywood alike. Chico brought a wild, youthful energy to the whole movie. He chased the glory of being a legendary gunslinger, but the village showed him love, belonging, and a life beyond the trigger. Choosing to stay behind gave him a rare, hopeful ending. Wallace was played by Robert J. Wilk at 45, tough, dangerous, and built for trouble. Wallace belonged to a brutal Western world where a simple look was warning enough. He oozed menace without hijacking the scene, bringing the kind of tension that made every standoff feel incredibly dangerous. Robert G. Wilk passed away in 1989 at 74. Over decades of gritty westerns and crime dramas, he became Hollywood's go-to bad guy, playing hired guns, ruthless outlaws, and hard-nosed thugs. Those sharp, unforgiving features made him a natural fit any gang of cutthroats. Wallace brought real grit to the screen. The movie needed more than just noble heroes. It required a brutal landscape where sudden violence felt completely normal. Wilk gave that threat a face, cold, sharp, and always ready. Meanwhile, the gunman at Boot Hill was played by Jim Davis at 51. Weathered, rugged, and looking like he had survived a dozen gunfights. He fit right into the deadly world surrounding our heroes. Even with limited screen time, Davis brought a heavy presence that made any dusty street feel explosive. Jim Davis passed away in 1981 at 71. Long after this movie, TV fans came to know him as Jock Ewing on Dallas, cementing his legacy in pop culture. Before that gig, he had already spent decades in westerns, where his gravelly voice and rough face fit like a glove. His part here is small, but it adds to the gritty frontier atmosphere. In a story about taking a stand, every trigger-happy extra reminds the audience just how cheap life really was out there, and the sheer courage needed to survive. Santos was played by Valentine D. Vargas at 25, playing one of Calvaris' main henchmen. He added a reckless, youthful threat to the gang. It was a chaotic energy that made the villagers' terror fully justified. Valentine D. Vargas passed away in 2018 at 83. He built a solid career on big and small screens, and classic cinema buffs likely remember him from Touch of Evil, another sweaty, paranoid border story full of menace. Santos ensured Calvaris' crew was more than just faceless extra muscle. Intimidating faces like his made the threat feel dangerously real, highly unpredictable, and ready to strike the village at any moment. In a movie built on slow burn dread, that edge was crucial. Calvaris' henchman was played by 35-year-old Larry Duran. Cold, silent, and dangerous in the shadows, he gave the bandit gang the kind of cruel face that made the villagers' absolute terror believable. Larry Duran passed away in 2002 at 76. For decades he worked as both an actor and stuntman, taking hits in dusty westerns and adventure movies, and raw action scenes where a heavy presence mattered way more than spoken lines. His role shows how a villain relies on the grunts around him. Calvera needed shooters who looked genuinely dangerous, and Duran brought that menace through pure physical presence, cold stares, and a face carved for a gunfight. The front office clerk was played by 26-year-old Victor French, bringing a fresh-faced energy, looking young and completely out of place in town. His minor role added a necessary touch of civilization to the brutal, unforgiving frontier. In a wild story like this, every single face matters. Every clerk, shooter, and terrified townsperson makes this dangerous landscape feel incredibly real. Victor French passed away in 1989 at 54. Years later, television fans fell in love with him on Little House on the Prairie and Highway to Heaven, where his comforting, rugged charm made him a beloved staple in living rooms across America. Looking back, his brief cameo here is a fascinating early glimpse of an actor destined for much softer, more heartfelt roles. Music swells. In this epic, he was just a small piece of the puzzle, but that rugged puzzle was built entirely from believable faces, just like his honest, gritty, and completely real. Flynn was played by 36-year-old Joseph Ruskin. With a sharp face and a tense posture that screamed trouble, Flynn added yet another layer of grit to this lawless frontier. He helped populate the town with shifty, dangerous men who felt like trouble long before any guns were drawn. Joseph Ruskin died in 2013 at 89. He spent decades as a familiar character actor on TV, especially for die-hard Star Trek fans, where his unique voice and intense grit made him unforgettable every single time he showed up. Flynn wasn't exactly a lead character, but roles like his gave the Magnificent Seven its real flavor. A movie like this needed more than just good guys and bad guys. It needed a wild country filled with doubt, danger, and hard faces that looked like they'd already seen too much. Chris Larrabee Adams was brought to life by Yul Brynner at age 40. Cool, deadpan, and impossible to read, Chris took charge of the Seven without ever having to raise his voice. And dressed in black with a quiet, heavy authority, he looked like a guy who survived it all and had zero time to waste on fear. Yul Brynner passed away in 1985 at 65 years old, famous for The King. And he brought a whole new gravity to the Magnificent Seven. Sharp, lean, and built for the brutal frontier. His bald head, icy stare, and intense focus made Chris one of the most striking gunslingers of that era. Chris was the anchor of the movie. In the end, he wasn't after cash, and he was hunting for glory. He knew the real price of violence better than most, but he still chose to defend that village. In a story about 7 men facing impossible odds, Brynner made leadership feel quiet, lonely, and absolutely unshakable. These legends gave us grit, sacrifice, and one of the most enduring westerns in the history of cinema. They might all be gone now, but what they built lives on. Thanks for watching. Stick around and subscribe for more classic cinema deep dives.